Hello everybody, and thanks once again for tuning into my YouTube channel. I hope you're enjoying the content, and as ever, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to reply to everybody, well except the trolls, but we have to live with those. So today I'm going to be talking about the new Fujifilm X-T3. Now this is a camera that I had not seen or heard anything about until the rumours started flying around. I wasn't privy to any insider information. In fact, only when it was officially launched last Thursday could I really see what this camera was all about. Now, I'm lucky enough right now to have one of the UK pre-production models. It's on a beta firmware, and whilst it is pre-production, I don't expect any differences in the look and feel between now and when the camera is released. Now, before we do start properly, I just want to mention that I will be speaking at the Fujifilm booth at Photokina in Cologne next week. I'll be doing a couple of talks, and before then I promise to have a haircut. And along with me at the Fujifilm booth will be my good friends Bert Stefani, Jonas Rask, Patrick Laroque. There will be others, of course, including the legendary Zach Arias. I'll link to the microsite below so you can see what's going on. And honestly, if you're there, please come and say hello. It would be lovely to meet some of you, see some friendly faces. Right then, so onto this camera. Well, I don't know, what can I say? Well, firstly, as you probably all know, I am a Fujifilm ambassador, but I hope that those of you that know me know that I always put content out with as much integrity as possible. And I mean, to that end, if there are things I feel wrong or not working, I'll tell you. And in fact, if you dig deep enough into my review history, you'll see that there were even full cameras that I really just didn't like much. Not because they were bad cameras, but they just didn't do what I needed them to do. The XM1, for example, even the XE1 and the XE2S. So honestly, whilst of course I have a good relationship with Fujifilm, I'm not paid to make this content. I don't get backhanders, and and the people that feed my family are my clients and you lot. So don't feel guilty if you click on any of the adverts around this video. So as I said, I haven't been involved in the X-T3, which means I can't give you an in-depth review yet. Notably because I wouldn't shoot too much commercial work on a prototype camera, and additionally, as we speak, there's no way of editing the RAW files. Though I believe Adobe are rolling that out very soon. I'm basically going to talk to you about how I have used it on and off over the last week or so, what I like about it, and I'll tell you what I don't like too, as there are some of those things also. Now, when I first saw the specs, I was like, yeah, okay, this could be a good thing. It looks like it's taking an X-T2 and speeding it up a bit. And it is a bit like that. I mean, the chassis is almost identical. It's made in China. That's why the price is a little bit cheaper, but it feels good. It's premium quality. I don't have any issues with that whatsoever. So, Fujifilm have taken on a lot on board, feedback from the photography community. And so, for example, the little door with all the ports behind them for the videos, that can be removed completely. You just snap it out. So the headphone jack, etc. All the ports are now in the body. Headphone jack, mic socket, USB-C are all in the body. There is a grip, of course, but literally all the grip is good for is holding the extra batteries, and you can charge via that grip too, of course. You don't even need the grip any longer for the boost mode. This is ace, as this kind of means that with the X-T2 you've almost felt like you needed the grip, but you really don't know any longer anymore. I still think the grip is a good thing, of course, but you don't really need it so much. It's great for having that extra battery life capacity with you. So kudos to Fujifilm for that. So what do I really think? Like I said, I thought it was an X-T2 with more speed. Actually, I have to say it's like an X-T2 on freaking steroids. This is a machine, and I mean that with all sincerity. It's a machine. Fujifilm have done a remarkable job with the X-T3 based on my brief time with the camera. I don't know, it's like a racehorse compared to a donkey when you compare it to the X-T2. Not that there's anything wrong with that donkey, of course. That donkey will still get you where you want to go, just get you there a little bit slower, I guess. Actually quite a bit slower. So we have the new X-Trans 4 processor, I think that's what they're calling it, which has 4 CPUs doing all the magic in the background. Now, one of the biggest differences between the X-T3 and all of the other Fujifilm cameras is this backlit sensor. There's a lot of very techie explanations on this on the internet, but my understanding, essentially, is that all of the light-gathering jiggery-pokery has been moved from the front to the back of the sensor. This means that more light can hit the sensor quicker, and should also result in better low-light performance, as all that jiggery-pokery is now going on in the back of the sensor and not clogging up all the relevant bits at the front. I was never going to be a scientist, I can tell you. Now, when I picked up the camera last week, I pointed out the first thing I saw, which happened to be my good friend Neil James. You really should check out his YouTube channel, by the way. point it up here. He has some great content, and he's a wonderful photographer and filmmaker, and he has the voice of God. You'll see what I mean. I have this strange obsession of keeping the very first picture I take with any new camera, and this is very much just a snapshot as he sat opposite me in the pub, coffee shop, or maybe it was a pub. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is the shooting speed. Now, I'm not particularly a heavy shooter at weddings, but there are moments where having a very rapid shutter does come in very handy. I have friends in the industry who may shoot upwards of 20,000 frames at a wedding, believe it or not, and that's fine. It's just the way they work. And for people like that, and sports photographers and wildlife photographers, they are really going to get the best out of this camera. The performance boost in this camera especially is pretty critical for those guys. Take a look at this series of images I shot of a skills footballer in London. He was amazing, by the way, totally amazing. This sequence is 177 continuous frames, JPEG of course, all straight out of the camera. I think the maximum buffer size is technically 200 images before it slows down. Not stops, just slows down. So this is 177 frames of Pele doing his thing. I don't use the sports mode for this, by the way. The sports mode is going to give you a 16 megapixels crop and allow you to shoot at a pretty staggering 30 frames per second. Now 16 megapixels might seem like a chunk to lose, and in reality it is, but when you consider what the 16 megapixel X-T3 was like, a high-speed burst, and compare it to this monster, you'll see just how far Fujifilm have pushed this line of cameras in 4 or 5 years, something like that. Now, one of the other features that Fujifilm are keen to tell us about is the much improved face detection, not to be confused with phase detection pixels. And by the way, the sensor now has 100% coverage of those lovely phase detection pixels, which I believe is the first APS-C camera to offer that. That's another reason the performance is so incredible in X-T3, the focus tracking, etc. Anyway, back to face detection. It's better. It's a lot better than the X-T2. I never used face detection on the X-T2. I just never really saw the need for it. But I tried it at a wedding and just shot this weekend for this confetti run you're about to see. This is one of the only times during a wedding where I really need to use continuous focus and high-speed burst. It worked. It worked very well. Have a look at this little sequence shot with a 23mm f1.4 legacy lens. Now remember, these are unedited, uncropped. I just wanted to see how the camera performed in both continuous high speed as well as face tracking. They were running pretty quick up that path too. I think it's pretty good. Great wedding, very, very fun couple. Now that said, it is a shame that you can't select faces like you can on, I think, on the Sony cameras. It's great that they've made face detection a whole lot better, but it would be great if it just had that one tiny final little feature. The face detection works very well in video, by the way, also. Unfortunately, I'm filming this on my X-T2, so I can't really show you. But there are loads of reviews out there that are already showing off the face detection during filming, and what I've seen looks brilliant. Of course, we also now have the touchscreen interface. And I doubt we'll see any new cameras that don't have that from now on in the future. It's handy, especially when shooting weddings, when you want to move around the tables and get record shots without lifting the camera to your eye. Of course, you can shoot by pressing the screen on the back, so you don't even need to press the shutter button in that respect. There's nice touches on the screen too, such as being able to disable certain parts of the screen. So if your nose keeps touching the left, as mine does, I don't know, I must have a weird shaped face or something, you can just switch that bit off. It's cool. If you're interested, by the way, last week I created a video that steps through the entire menu system of the X-T3. It's a bit of a long one, but for those who are interested, I'll link below and it should appear up here too. In it I'll show you every single menu feature of the camera. Now, when using the camera, I was keen to check the focus speed of the legacy lenses, such as the 23 1.4, 56 1.2, which are the two lenses that I use the absolute most, and it's practically tangible that they are quicker to snap focus, seriously. In this image of the gentleman being slapped around the face, it's a jokey slap, don't worry, no gentlemen were hurt in the making of this video. I had to react quickly to the moment, and the 56 1.2 shot at 1.2 immediately snapped to the place I needed it to be. Now, I don't think the X-T3 was poor in that regard, don't get me wrong. I never had any real issues, but there is a clear and noticeable difference in the AF acquisition speed here, seriously. Additionally, this next image from just as the couple started to walk up the aisle. I didn't want to shoot all of this on the X-T3, so I just shot a couple of frames on it with the 56 1.2, and once again, flawless. This church wasn't particularly dark, in fairness, and I would expect the X-T2 loaded with 56 1.2 to be efficient here too. But when you can just feel when things are quicker, when the gears are grinding smoother and the oil is slicker, and it's just a bit like that, it just works quicker. Now, those of you who shoot JPEG in colour will love the colour chrome effect, probably. You can right now see the difference between the two on the screen. It's pretty subtle in the examples I've shot here, but I really liked it on a couple of shots I took on the streets using Velvia film simulation. It really gives a bit more impact to the images. It won't be to everybody's taste, and you can tweak the strength of it in the camera, of course. By the way, that feature was first in the GFX 50S, I think, and in that camera you can only shoot it in single shot mode. When using colour chrome effect. On the X-T3, presumably because of all the new processor gubbins on board, you can shoot with this even in burst mode, so it's pretty neat. Now, on to one of my absolute favourite features and something I've been hoping for many years, the Monochrome Adjustment option. If you're a JPEG shooter and love the monochrome images, and who doesn't love Acros film simulation, right? You can now dial up or down the temperature of the JPEGs. I just love this feature. It's going to save me that extra step of warming up all my monochrome images in post-production. And I feel this will be very well received, especially of those of us who love the JPEGs from the Fujifilm cameras. Really nice touch. Now, I want to talk about the video elements of the camera. I didn't buy the XH1 because, I just didn't really like it much. I want my cameras to be as small as possible, and of course cameras like the GFX have to be larger because of the sensor, but I never felt the XH1 was for me. I felt I could do everything I needed with the X-T2 when it came to making films. Now, the X-T3 has really embraced the filming, and yes, it doesn't have in-body stabilization like the XH1, and for some that may well be critical, but I tend to shoot my films with a monopod or just on an OIS lens or a gimbal, and I'm amazed how much they have crammed into the X-T3 in terms of filming ability. Absolutely amazed. I want to say that in my mind the X-T3 is the perfect hybrid camera for those that may want to create movies as well as stills. And especially at this price point, it's crazy. It has some amazing new features as well as ones that should be standard, like zebras, tally lights, etc. For example, you can now shoot 4K 60 frames per second and up to 400 megabits. It has high efficiency video codec. It has intra-frame noise reduction. You can control internal and external audio. Coupled with that, you now have all your video settings independent of your stills. So if you want to shoot externa, externa is in the X-T3 with the high shadows, for example, but Velvia for no shadows for stills, you can. There's no awkward changing of those settings between shooting modes, which is really good. If you want to take a look at a very short low-light video clip I did in Trafalgar Square, check the link above. I shot that in 60 frames per second 4K, and believe it, this is the first APS-C camera, I think, that has 4K 60 frames per second video footage. I'm told also that by the end of the year there will be a firmware update that will allow us to film F-Log to one card and 4K to another card. This will be great for backup scenarios, obviously, test footage. Now, as I said, I'm really blown away by the low-light focus acquisition of the camera. Here's a simple sample out-of-camera shot. It's cropped for YouTube. It's of my little boy reading a book at 12,800 ISO and handheld at 1/55th of a second. This is a pretty low light room, hence the exposure values, but I did try it on the dance floor also at the wedding on the weekend, and it's impressive. Again, remember, I won't shoot too much at a wedding because it's still a prototype, but I will say that it feels so much more responsive than the X-T2, both in terms of focus acquisition and the rendering of the very high ISO images. It's hard to communicate it, but I feel that those who shoot in situations like this, or anybody who requires a camera to be able to shoot at full belt confidently in low light, will really see this as a huge upgrade. Yeah, it's a huge upgrade. So, as I said, there are a few features, or lack of them, that I would have liked to have seen in the camera. I would have loved the camera to have had a fully articulating screen. Not for selfies, but for the ability to monitor footage when filming. I'm sure it will come to all cameras eventually, actually, but it didn't make the X-T3. I'd also have loved to have seen seconds in the main camera clock. Again, something that a lot of people have been asking for. It's really good when trying to sync those cameras. And on that point, it's still not easy to sync the settings between the bodies. With both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi in this camera, I'm hoping that there might be a firmware update at some point that allows us to pair two cameras and sync settings, just at the click of a button. Fingers crossed on that one. Okay, as I said, I can't do an in-depth review, but I've tried to cover as much of the bases as possible. I have to give this camera back now to Fujifilm UK, and that leaves me with a dilemma. It's hard. It's hard to kind of think about this camera. I didn't buy the XH1 because I didn't feel I needed it. I've always separated out need and want when it comes to my cameras. For example, I suppose I didn't need the X-T3, but I wanted it because, it was such a lovely camera, it still is. It had 4K and just felt like a beautiful camera to use. My X-T1 and my X-T2 have only ever felt like cameras I had as backups to my X Pro 1 and my X Pro 2. My heart is in the rangefinder style camera. And that will never change, I don't think. And I've been a huge advocate of the X Pro 2 and would in almost all cases use it over my X-T2. The X Pro 2 is that lovely Fujifilm heart to it, and it feels to me like a camera I just want to use all the time. I enjoy shooting with it. It's a real pleasure. The X-T2 never struck those chords with me. Not once. It was, and it still is, of course, a fine camera, but it was a functional camera for me. Rather than a pleasurable camera. Does that make sense? I hope so. Now, I have to be totally honest and say that whilst I still adore my X Pro 2s, the X-T3 is taking me by surprise. It's so much better in terms of its capabilities. Will we ever even see an X Pro 3? Who knows? I mean, the release schedule was X Pro 1, X-T1, X Pro 2, X-T2. Now we seem to have skipped the next X Pro and gone straight to X-T3. I hope that's not the case. What I have to be honest about, though, is that the X-T3 is better than the X Pro 2, and of course the X-T2, and I will have to buy a couple of X-T3s as I shoot stills and movies too, in all seriousness, and I feel like I should be putting my hands around my ears on my X Pro 2s when I say this. I can almost see them in the cupboard going into a sulk. The X-T3s, in my opinion, are by far the best APS-C cameras Fujifilm have ever made. It's a beast, and for me, fast-paced weddings in the UK where there's hardly any light, I think it's going to be my wedding camera of choice for the foreseeable future. So, there you have it, my honest feelings about the X-T3. Please do like, subscribe, share to the channel if you so wish. It does help me out. I've got some very exciting content coming in the next few weeks that I hope you'll like. Hit the bell icon, that side, to remind you of new content from me, and once again, leave any comments below. Check out the last couple of videos on the channel also, as they are also about the X-T3. Come and say hello at Photokina. Have a lovely day, and I shall see you next time.